Welcome to Wayne's Word. Today we're going to visit with Rabbi Jay Sherwood of Colorado Springs. We're going to talk about two recent hate crimes, one involving two murders in Washington, D.C., the other being the horrific terrorist attack by a foreign terrorist in our country illegally, in, of all places, Pearl Street in Boulder, Colorado. We're going to talk about a 373% increase in anti-Jewish hate crimes in just the past 5 years in Colorado alone and try to get to the bottom of this. So stay tuned. George, take it.
Welcome to Wayne's World, rising above the noise and confusion.
It's Wayne's Word.
Oh.
Welcome, Rabbi Sherwood.
Thank you, Wayne. Glad to be here with you today.
Can you tell us a little bit about your background?
Sure. So I'm the rabbi of Temple Shalom here in Colorado Springs. Been with the synagogue for 8 years. Came from Southern California, where I worked as a rabbi and also in Jewish education there as well. It's generational. My father of blessed memory was also a rabbi.
Okay.
And in my world of the rabbinate, I approach things really from the idea of being a teacher. Some people approach their jobs in different ways. But for me, being a rabbi, the word rabbi actually means my teacher. And I take that piece to be very seriously, that I can sit and be people's teachers along the way.
Great. And you are an UCLA alum.
I am.
Okay.
I did my undergraduate work at UCLA with a bachelor's degree in Jewish studies. And then I received my master's in rabbinic studies and my rabbinic ordination from the Academy for Jewish Religion, California. And then I also have a master's degree in religious education from Hebrew Union College, Jewish Institute of Religion in New York.
What was your reaction when you heard about this thing on Sunday where this terrorist went in and attacked Jews who were peacefully marching, on and near the Pearl Street Mall in Boulder, which is a big, very crowded, usually very crowded pedestrian mall. It's kind of a circus. There's all sorts of entertainers and artists at work all the time down there. I mean, there are even people who walk tightropes. It's really quite an incredible scene, something you wouldn't necessarily expect to see in the West, but maybe in LA or San Francisco. But in Boulder, it's a very thriving place where all sorts of people from every potential background get together and just have a good time and celebrate life. And so this happened, and it seemed like a very strange place for someone to attack Jews.
Absolutely. I had kind of a mixed reaction. Of course, I was shocked by the events that happened. And at the same time, I had a reaction of, oh no, here we go again, because this is becoming more and more common. And to look at a place, like you said, at Pearl Street, my guess is that most people who live in Colorado have been to Pearl Street and been in the stores and see the buskers on the street and the restaurants and the bars that are there. And it's a place that a lot of people go to have a good time. There's music halls nearby and all sorts of great things. And so when you see an event like this happen at a place which is a gathering place for fun and a good time and friendship, it's shocking. But at the same time, a bit of here we go again. In the last just couple of months, we've had, and these are only the big news ones that make the big national news. We had the governor of Pennsylvania, Governor Shapiro, who the house is attacked by arsons during the first night of Passover. We have two people who work at the Israeli embassy in Washington, D.C., murdered on the streets of Washington, D.C. We have this Molotov cocktail attack in Boulder. And my reaction of shock, but another thing I thought of besides here we go again was, okay, after Boulder, when's the next one going to happen and where's that one going to be? And what a horrible thing that's the thoughts that enter my mind.
Yes, and it's not like Jews in America are just like any other religious group, like Muslims or Christians, or you can name any number of them. The attacks on Jews are far, far more frequent and at a much higher rate of the percentage of the Jewish population than of any other ethnic or religious or racial group.
Right. If you look at the statistics that come out of the ADL and also the statistics that are coming out of the FBI, what we've seen is a growth in all of these attacks. According to the ADL, We've had over 360% growth in anti-Semitic incidents over the last 5 years. And over the last 10 years, it's a growth of over 850%, which to hear percentages like that, it doesn't even register because those percentages are so big. The other thing we know is that here in the mountain region, Colorado, Wyoming, New Mexico, that we're actually higher than the national average. During 2024, there was just under one anti-Semitic incident per day. And those are the ones that are reported to the ADL, not the other ones we know that have happened without being reported. And the FBI also has said that over the last few years, there's been an increase in the percentage of hate crimes based on religion, and a very large percentage, I don't know the percentage that they've said, but I know it's a very large percentage of those that are against the Jewish community. And one of the things that's happened with this is, aside from the growth, which I have a few theories of why it's growing, but the thing that has exacerbated that growth was October 7th, 2023, the attack on southern Israel by Hamas. And since that event happened, anti-Semitism has really grown on college campuses and out of the mouths of popular culture and out of the mouths of politicians, and that's made things even worse.
I mean, the ADL talks about these statistics and then talks about, these sort of pro-Christian nationalist, white supremacy groups and all of that. But that's not really where this is coming from. I mean, I'm sure some of it is, but it seems like this is more of a sort of pro-Palestine, anti-Israel movement of the left that we're seeing today. Am I wrong about that?
I think it's both, really, because what we're seeing is there's been a huge growth on the right of anti-Semitism on the fringe of the right wing, and we noticed that. Notice I use the word noticed that earlier than we noticed the growth of anti-Semitism on the left fringe. It's always been on the right fringe. It's always been on the left fringe. Over the past 10 years, we've publicly seen more publicly reported incidents from the right fringe. And in recent times now, we've seen more reported reports from the left fringe. And the incidents certainly that surround October 7th are definitely coming from the left end of that fringe right now.
So fringe is sort of the key here. It's extremists on either side of the political spectrum.
It is. I come from the perspective that what's the best for Jews and frankly for the African-American community and the LGBTQ plus community and the Hispanic community and any other minority group that you want to name, I think the center is the safest place. When the right and the left are working together to do what's best for America, in our case, or we see these things happening in other countries as well. What's best for countries in Europe or countries in Asia or wherever it may be, the center is the place where minorities get taken care of, because generally the two sides, or in some cases 3 or 4 different sides that happen to be part of their political spectrum, those sides are trying to find a place in the middle for everybody to meet. When we get too far toward the fringes and we're not trying to work together at all, we're trying to work against each other, that's where it becomes dangerous for people who are not of the mainstream culture, you might say, of that particular state or country, as the case may be.
My old friend and colleague, Dr. Charles Krauthammer, he was a very, he wrote, he was sort of a moderate, but in his later years before he died, he was a sort of more of a center-right person, but he'd been on the left as well, toward the center, but on the left he was a speechwriter for Jimmy Carter, I believe, and other leading Democrats. And he always said the one thing that scared him the most were extremes in either direction. That just horrified him. And you don't ever see moderates out saying hateful things and holding rallies. I mean, there's no such thing as a moderate Klan rally.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. What you see, when you see what in my mind I label as a mainstream Republican or a mainstream Democrat, these are people that are trying to work across the aisle and trying to solve problems. We have a problem with whatever it may be, whether it's security or it's financial problems or it's feeding the hungry, whatever it may be. These people that are in the mainstream and center right, center left, They're trying to solve problems. In my mind, the fringe right and the fringe left are trying to create problems as opposed to trying to solve them.
Now, while we're seeing a tremendous and troubling spike in anti-Semitic or anti-Jewish, I prefer the anti-Jewish because anti-Semitic doesn't make a whole lot of sense because a lot of the people who commit these crimes are themselves Semites, Middle Easterners. So I tend to think of this more as sort of an ethnic racist sort of movement.
I think anti-Jewish is a very descriptive term that works very well.
Okay. While we're seeing a modern spike in this that we haven't seen since the Holocaust, this goes back a long ways. I mean, Jews have been targets of hatred for thousands of years.
You've heard of this guy named Pharaoh.
Yes.
So anti-Semitism, anti-Judaism, anti-Jewish thought goes back to biblical times. And so it's morphed in various ways over the millennia, but it's existed since ancient times and it still exists today.
Why do you think that is? What's the nexus for this? What caused it from the beginning?
If I knew the true answer to that, they'd give me the Nobel Peace Prize and then award me all other prizes, and I'd be going around the world giving lectures on it. But I have my own guesses as to what it is. And I think it's part of a world where we are afraid of the other, where people don't want to bring in people who are different than they are. And in those kinds of worlds, it's easy to think about, I'm going to blame the other for my problems instead of trying to solve my problems. And the Jewish people have existed for thousands of years. So for thousands of years, we have been the other. So we've also been a small number compared to the whole world. There are roughly 15 million Jews in the entire world.
2% of the United States population.
Roughly 2% of the world's of the U.S. population, but the world population even smaller, right?
Yes.
And so being that small, it's easy to pick on the little guy when you're the dominant one. It doesn't make it the right thing to do, but Jews seem to be throughout time, because we're a small number of people, because we are the other, it's easy to blame us for I don't mean you, Wayne, but your people's, society's problems, because there's not very many of us to complain about that.
Sure. Now, on the left, the political left, and I grew up in a liberal household when I was younger, and I think it was the best kind of liberalism. It was about love and peace, and we were opposed to the Vietnam War and that type of thing. But that form of liberalism, old school liberalism, always embraced minorities. Minorities were to be protected and to be honored and cherished as members of society who had struggles that more mainstream populations didn't. But now we're seeing out of universities, which tend to be liberal environments, and I like to make a distinction here between liberal, like I just described, and leftist and hard leftist. But what we're seeing now out of the universities, particularly since the attack on Israel in October of 2023, we are seeing a big movement of protests, and we have professors lecturing about how Jews are the perpetrators and they are the oppressors of and the oppressed are Palestinians. Well, first of all, they were attacked. Jews were attacked. They didn't initiate this. They were the victims of this. How did we go from? I mean, how is it that you went to UCLA? How is it that academic environments, which were traditionally liberal, have become so extreme on this issue?
And I wish everything you just said was wrong. I really do. I wish that was all wrong.
I do too.
But it's not. And I can't attack every professor in every university with this, because I think it's a subset within the university world. I don't think it's the entire university world. So I want to be clear on that. But there is a significant minority. It's still a minority, but it is a significant minority of students and faculty who are truly engaged in this sort of behavior. And the reality is this, that there's a few pieces to the puzzle. Piece number one, and I remember this from my days at UCLA and my friends being at other schools, when you're 18, 19, 20 years old, protests are fun. It's a great time to go be involved, and I'm going to scream and yell in favor of a cause that I think is a good cause. And you know what's a good cause? Freedom for people. And they're saying free Palestine, so that must be a good cause because they're saying freedom. But what they're not saying is what those words really mean. And we've let the university systems let things get out of hand. I'm all in favor of protests. People say they're pro-Palestinian. Guess what? I'm pro-Palestinian. I'd like to see Palestinians have plenty of food. I'd like to have Palestinians have plenty of housing. I'd like to see Palestinians have good jobs. I'd like to see Palestinians have passports so they can go travel the world and see beautiful places like I've had the opportunity to do. But I'm not in favor of terrorist organizations who are the government of countries being supported by people on college campuses. And this is really what's going on. And it's behind the scenes. One, we have the fun factor of being in a protest. But two, Iran, Hezbollah, other organizations are the money that's behind what's going on these college campuses. And we have activists who are coming in to rile up the students. And some of these students, they want to be involved in some sort of protest, and they don't really understand what's going on. They say free Palestine. I'd like to agree with that sentence, but I want to finish the sentence. Free Palestine from Hamas.
Yes.
That sentence makes sense to me. When they say free Palestine, my question is free Palestine from what? When they say from the river to the sea, did they know that it's the Jordan River? Because I've talked to students that don't know that means the Jordan River, and they don't know the sea is the Mediterranean Sea, and they don't know that from the Mediterranean to the river, that means get rid of all the Jews. That either means displace them or kill them. When they say globalize the Intifada, I've talked with students, what does globalize the Intifada mean? It means globalize the idea that Palestinians should have freedom. And I said, that's not what it means. I was in Israel in the late 1980s when the first Intifada happened, and I watched the events that happened, and I was close by some of the events that happened. The Intifada was about terrorizing and killing Jews. So when you say globalize the Intifada, it means globalize terrorizing and killing Jews. And somehow we have professors who think that the right to free speech is an important constitutional right, extends without limits. You can't say fire in a movie theater. You can't say, I think you should go shoot pick whichever politician you want, presidents, senators, congressmen, mayors, city councilmen, whatever. You can't say that.
Right.
But so why can you say kill Jews on your college campus?
And that's what they say.
And that's what they're saying.
You can't say river to the sea without advocating genocide of Jews.
And if not genocide, certainly the displacement of half the Jewish people in the world.
Right. And we have one Jewish state in the entire world, right. Israel, and whereas there are a lot of Islamic theocracies. So definitely Jews are the minority in this equation.
Oh, absolutely.
And so last December, there was a House committee hearing, and the presidents of Harvard, Penn, MIT, two of those being Ivy League schools, MIT may as well be, were each asked, does calling for the genocide of Jews violate university rules or codes of conduct, yes or no? None of them answered with a simple yes. They couldn't answer a simple question. And if that doesn't violate the rules of those universities, I don't know what does. Because like you said, free speech does not extend to advocating violence toward a group. I can't say lynch black people
right. And
at
I'll
a
tell
university.
I'm actually okay with students being on a college campus and yelling, Israel sucks.
Mm-hmm.
I don't agree, but I think they have every right in the world to say Israel sucks. We don't like what they're doing in Gaza. Great. Let's talk about that. Let's talk about what are the military strategies that are going on? Why is Israel's army acting in the way that it is? And is it a moral army? Is it not? Is it killing innocent people? Is it not? These are all legitimate questions. I have my own answers to those questions. People may agree or disagree with my answers to those questions. Those things are okay. To shout Israel's committing genocide, not okay. To say Israel Doesn't have a right to exist, not okay. River to the sea, not okay. Globalize the Intifada, not okay. These are all calls for violence against Jews. Scream about that you don't like Israel all day long. I'll sit down in your protest place and talk to you about it. I'll tell you why I think Israel's acting in a moral way. I'll also tell you what I think. If you really want to know, I'll tell you what I think about the Israeli government. Guess what? They're a government like any other country. You know how many people in America don't like Trump or didn't like Biden? It's half and half, right?
Right.
Do you know how many people in Israel like Netanyahu and don't like Netanyahu? It's half and half.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's not like there's this coming attacking Jews in America means that Israel will follow what the Jews of America say. No. And so this idea of allowing this sort of radical behavior, stopping Jewish students from going to class, attacking Jewish students as they walk across campus, even allowing faculty to say inappropriate things to students on campus. I can tell you from personal experience. I have a daughter who's a college student here in Colorado. A faculty member of the university said something very negative about Israel and about my daughter. We went through a process at the university, and the end result was they basically said, we're going to do nothing about it because faculty have free academic speech to say whatever they want about any issues in the world. If you can't handle it, maybe you shouldn't be a college student.
That's really incredible. I've heard these types of stories, but it wouldn't apply to anyone else. If a faculty member treated any other minority student that way,
I don't believe that would happen. No.
I can't imagine any university putting up with a blatantly racist professor saying racist things. Yet that's what this is. And when they take it out personally on a particular Jewish student or a group of Jewish students because of policy that they don't like in the Middle East, because they don't like Netanyahu or they don't like Israel or the way Israel has conducted the war defending itself, that has nothing to do with an individual Jewish student on a campus. Yet that's what it manifests in.
It absolutely does. I can tell you just for the record, my daughter has no vote in the Knesset in Israel, and she's not the prime minister of Israel. And by the way, either am I. So an attack on my daughter or attack on me or attack on my congregants, and I actually have congregants here at Temple Shalom at our synagogue who know people who were attacked and injured in Boulder. The Jewish world, we're a small world. And so when there's an attack on one Jewish person, this idea of 6 degrees of separation, I don't think there's 6 degrees of separation between me and any Jew in the world. I have a congregant who knew someone who was burned this weekend in Boulder. Let's go to last month. The attack and the murder in Washington, D.C., a dear friend of mine who's an education director in Kansas. The woman who was killed was one of the students in her religious school where she ran the school. Let's go a month before that. The attack on the governor in Pennsylvania and the fire there. I know someone who's Jewish who is good friends with someone who worked on the governor's campaign. So we're only 2 or 3 degrees of separation in the entire Jewish world. So it's horrifying to see the event happen. But as someone in the Jewish community, I know these people, or I know these people who know those people. The first person killed on October 7th, Ophir Liebstein. He was the mayor of that particular region. He was killed on October 7th, 2023. I had lunch with him in Israel in June of 2023. We were talking about raising money to build a little further of this after-school electronics and robotics program that they had in that region for kids to do stuff after school and learn a skill that would help them in their work going ahead. So when attacks like this happen in the Jewish world, like I said, there's only 15 million Jews on a planet with more than 8 billion people. It becomes personal.
Right. And I have a very dear friend up in the Boulder area, and he and his family most weekends are involved in Jewish activities.
And the thing we should say also about the people in Boulder, this event that was going on in Boulder is not a Boulder event. This is something that happens in cities all over the world. I've participated in this particular walk, not in Boulder, but I was in New York last year and I participated in the weekly walk in Central Park in New York. So this happens in cities all across America and as a matter of fact in Europe, and there's some Asian cities as well where there's a weekly walk And the walk is not an anti-Palestinian walk. It's not even a pro-Israel walk. It's a walk that simply says, we want to call your attention to the hostages. Please help the hostages be freed. That's the only message of this group that was there on Sunday.
Right. And this weekend in Boulder is going to be a big Jewish festival downtown.
It's an annual event. As I understand it, I haven't spoken with the organizers of the event, but as I understand it, they are looking into changes to the event. It will be, according to what I have heard so far, I received an email from Jewish Colorado, which is the larger federation that unites Jewish groups here in the state of Colorado. It said that the people in charge are working on revamping some things. Certainly they'll increase security. But second of all, what are things that would or would not be appropriate to be part of the festival in light of the terrorist attack? I suspect in the next few days we'll hear that. We're just coming out of the Jewish holiday of Shavuot. Some people celebrate one day, some people celebrate 2 days. So Wednesday will be the big meeting day for them to kind of decide what's this festival going to look like now after these events.
I think this has had a chilling effect. I hope that the effect that it had, that a lot of people show up in Boulder for the Jewish festival. I will be there, and I hope the security is intense. Unfortunately, that makes it hard to attend an event, but we don't want any trouble with this event. Obviously, it's going to attract the attention of anti-Jewish people. But my friend who marches for Jewish causes and just to celebrate his culture, he's not going to be doing that anymore anytime soon. That's what he told me, because it's too dangerous. This must have had a chilling effect on most Jews, what happened in Boulder last Sunday, as in terms of what they are able to do and in terms of being able to exercise their freedom and liberty and free speech. Have you been hearing that?
Absolutely. There's two things we can do, and Jews in America are doing both of those things. Number one, we can hide. And there's a good argument for it. To say, if we are out in the public and people identify us as Jews, and this group of people or groups of people say that Jews are to blame for what we perceive to be the evil that the Israeli government is perpetrating upon the Palestinian people, et cetera, maybe we should hide for a while and not be seen, and we'll be safe. Safety is a great thing. I like being safe. You like being safe.
Mm-hmm.
So the people who have chosen that pathway, I can't fault them. I really can't, because who am I to say to them, don't go to the place where you feel safe? I could never say that to them. I would say to them, do what you need to do to feel safe. But for me, I wear this kippah on my head. I wear this kippah on my head when I'm leading services at Temple Shalom. I wear this kippah on my head when I'm buying stuff at Costco. I have this yellow ribbon that I wear every day. And I have this dog tag. It says in Hebrew, Halev Shalanu Shabui Ba'aza. It means our hearts are prisoners in Gaza. And then underneath it, it says in English, bring them home now. I've been wearing this for a very long time. We're over 600 days of hostages in Gaza. I will continue to wear this, both this dog tag and this yellow ribbon, until every single hostage is free. I'm sitting here at a podcast with you. This morning I did an interview on the radio. The last couple of days I've done interviews for newspapers and television stations. My face is on TV. My kippah walks through Costco and through the gas station. I'm out there every day. And to me, I think it's important that I'm out there. If people want to hide, I support them in their hiding. I want them to be safe. But for me, I believe the thing that I need to do, especially as a rabbi, especially as a leader of the Jewish community, is be even more outspoken. Someone said to me before I did the radio interview this morning and before I came here to be with you today, they said, are you sure you want to be talking to people that are on the right wing of the political spectrum? And my answer was, I want to talk to anybody that wants to help end anti-Semitism, that wants to end Jew hatred. I don't care left, right, center, or somewhere that's none of the above. I want to talk to everybody and get everybody's help to get rid of this. How do we do it? You asked me that. How do we deal with this? The answer truly is I have no idea, because if I knew, we would have solved it. But here's the one thing I know. I often speak to high school groups, and I tell them college is great. I learned a lot in college. You know where I learned more than in college? Traveling. I went to places where I don't live. And you know where I don't live? Other countries, other states. I also don't live on the other end of El Paso County. There's people who are different than I am. And the more people that I can meet and spend time with who are different than I am, I find out they're really not different than I am. Maybe their skin color is different color. Maybe they like different food than I like. Maybe that's because I'm a picky eater. I don't know. They pray to God a different way than I do, or maybe they don't pray to God. And frankly, I'm okay with that. But these things are little tiny differences. They're humans and I'm a human. And the more we meet people who are different than we are, we see those differences are so small. And those differences, they matter enough to make us interesting and different individuals, but they don't matter enough to create hatred between us.
Right. And I think aside from the people on the extremes, I mean, I can get along with almost anyone unless it is somebody on the far extreme, either right or left, you know, with some sort of extreme cause. This person, the suspect in the Boulder terrorist attack is Egyptian. He's an illegal immigrant, was residing in Colorado Springs. So he traveled quite a ways. It's an hour and 45 minutes from Colorado Springs to Boulder. And so, like you said, it really wasn't a Boulder attack. It came from the outside. But what do you do about someone? We have a country that has allowed a lot of people in who we don't know anything about. This guy being a classic example.
Let's be fair about who he is. Just to be fair with this, he entered the United States legally.
Yes,
and again, this is not an excuse, but this is part of the issues that we need to think about. He entered the U.S. legally with a visitor's visa. He applied, as I understand it, for some sort of protection here in the United States, and that was denied. And then he was here legally, and then his visa expired, and he didn't leave the country. So, not that that's a good thing, but I think it's important that we look at not grouping everybody into one group. These are people who came over the border illegally. Well, frankly, I believe there's people who came over the border illegally who are perfectly fine living in America.
Oh, I agree.
And there's some who are not. There's some people who came over the border legally who are fine living in America, and some who are not. And I don't want to group them into one big giant group of people because there's so many individuals that are involved there. But clearly this was a guy who, when he came to America, I haven't talked to him. I don't know what his intentions. I like to think good about people. So I'd like to think he came to America because he thought it was a safe, free place to be. That's what I'd like to think about him when he came here. At some point in time, maybe it was when he came here, but maybe it was later, he decided that all Jews are to blame for what the Israeli army is doing in Gaza. I didn't hear him say, by the way, anybody in Hamas is to blame for what Israel is doing in Gaza, and the blame lies with Hamas. They're the ones who attacked. We want a ceasefire. There was a ceasefire on October 6th, 2023. They're the ones who broke the ceasefire and murdered over 1,000 people and took hostages. So at some point in time, he decided that it would be the right thing to do, and my description for this is insanity. He decided the right thing to do was to go where he knew there was going to be a regular Jewish event. And that was the march. And I think I've seen in the news that he had said to the police that he wanted to die and expected to die in the attack. That tells me that had he come to my synagogue, which I looked on the map, the townhome where he and his wife and children lived is 6.9 miles away from my synagogue. Scary close.
Yes.
He could have come to my synagogue and attacked in Hebrew say chas v'chalila. It kind of means God forbid, right? But from what I've seen, it seems like he wanted a more public place to make a public statement. This is scary to me, that someone wants to attack Jews, but do it in a way not only that attacks Jews, but also would be a public statement and maybe inspire other people to attack Jews. If you attack in a synagogue, no one's filming it on their cell phone. But if you attack Jews out on Pearl Street on a weekend where you've been there, I've been there. Pearl Street's I love Pearl Street. There's
Absolutely.
hundreds or thousands of people wandering around having a great time. That gives you more publicity. And I think that's even scarier than attacking the synagogue.
So this fella did not care about his own life. And when you have an extremist who is willing to give his life for the cause, it seems like that person could not possibly be reasoned with. And these type of threats are out there for a number of reasons. I mean, Colorado has a huge crime problem in general right now. We were just ranked second most dangerous state in the country by U.S. News and World Report. Last year we were third. This year we're second. Now, I moved here from Washington, D.C. in the early 1990s. My wife is a Colorado native. There wasn't crime in Colorado. I mean, just it was so rare and unusual. It was not something you ever thought about. Mm-hmm. General street crime and murders, anything like that. There wasn't much of that. And if the murders that did occur were between people who knew each other, they weren't stranger murders like we see today. So something's gone very wrong in Colorado in terms of crime in general. And I don't think the state is doing a very good job protecting people. And certainly Jews end up on the very front lines of that dilemma. So what can Jews do? Because like you said, you understand if somebody wants to go hide. I get that too. I love these sayings, Patrick Henry, give me liberty or give me death. The New Hampshire state motto is live free or die. That's all great in theory. I love it. Unless you're a father and a husband with children
Exactly.
and you would like your family to stay alive, then hiding becomes a real option.
And it becomes, in some cases, a very good choice.
Sure. And it's certainly what people did in Poland and in Nazi Germany. A lot of Jews hid as best they could for as long as they could.
But there were also those who fought back.
What do you tell someone, say, in your synagogue or just in your community in general, who's very frightened right now and doesn't want to hide, wants to go be part of the Jewish festival next weekend in Boulder, wants to live a normal life? And how can they protect themselves?
So the first thing I tell them is, I'm scared too. I actually am. I've seen people I know killed on October 7th. I've seen people who are 1 or 2 degrees directly across from me who've been victims of these attacks. I've seen my own moments of anti-Semitism with my daughter in college. Growing up, I don't know if I could count the number of anti-Semitic things that have been said to me. When I was a kid, I had some kids in my school draw swastikas on my notebook, and they beat me up after school. I was sent to the hospital to check for a concussion. So anti-Semitism and anti-Judaism and Jew hatred, it's not new to me. I've seen it my entire life. And I am scared. I'm afraid that maybe the next attack is on Jews in Colorado Springs. But I'm not going to let that stop me from living a Jewish life. And I tell that to my congregants. I say I share the scariness that you feel inside of you. I feel it. But at the same time, we need to do the things to be Jews. So what are we doing? We as a Jewish community have created something called the Secure Community Network. It's actually based out of Chicago. And it is a security network. Most of the people who work there are ex-FBI, ex-police chiefs. And it's a network to provide security information for Jewish organizations, synagogues, Jewish community centers, Jewish schools, etc., across the United States.
And what's the name of this again? I'd like our listeners and viewers to be able to find this
absolutely.
online.
It's SCN is the initials, Secure Community Network.
Okay.
Secure Communities Network. And it's owned and operated by the North American Jewish Federations. And it was put together after the shootings in Pittsburgh some years ago, another anti-Jewish incident. And the people that work there help provide us with information so that we can put together security plans in our places. So as at Temple Shalom, my synagogue, we have a security plan. I'm not going to tell you what it is because I don't want the world to know what it is, because then it's not a security plan anymore. It's a not security plan.
Right.
But in order to come into our building, and frankly, every other synagogue in America, you have to walk past a guard with a gun. We have an armed guard with a private security company at the front door. Sometimes we have more than one. Again, part of our plan, things change around a lot. As you and I have talked off the air, I'm not the biggest gun fan in the world, as you know.
Sure.
That being said, I want a guy with a gun who is trained as a security guard to be at my front door, because that's how scared I am that something might come our way. And this security company, I know the owner of the security company. I love this guy, and I love his staff. His staff take care of us as if we're their own families. They've learned the names of my congregants. They've told me when there's things that don't look right, even when they're not things that are security related. They've come to really become a part of our family, and they take good care of us, and they make us feel safe. And I let my congregants know that we have done other things that are part of our security plans, some of them with donated money and some of them with government funding. And that's another thing that I hope the world will do, is I hope that all the listeners will write to Governor Polis and ask him. He's already said that there will be increased funding for Jewish organizations for security. I hope they'll write to him, and I hope they'll write to their local congressmen and local senators, as well as to President Trump, and ask for them to release more security money that can be added into security funds for synagogues and other Jewish organizations to keep us safe. I tell my congregants that we have those things in place. We have guards in place, and we have community in place, and we have information coming to us from the FBI and police departments through the Secure Communities Network that help keep us safe. I also tell them, keep your eyes open. You know, when you go to visit Israel on a tour, have you been?
I've not been to Israel. I plan to go. I'm very much looking forward to it.
It's an amazing place, and if you're Jewish or Christian or Muslim, or Baha'i for that matter, there's incredible, beautiful religious places to go to, but there's also great nature and great food.
Mm-hmm.
So when you go to Israel, one of the things you learn about is something that every Israeli kid grows up knowing. Chefetz chashud. Chefetz chashud means a suspicious object. If there's a suspicious object, you should let somebody know. And I've seen suspicious objects in Israel. I saw one blown up that was actually a bomb. I saw one blown up that family wasn't going to eat any fruit that night because they left one bag of fruit sitting on the bench. Nobody knew what it was. They blew it up, and I think it was bananas or oranges. But you can't be too safe, right? You have to be sure of it. And so I tell my congregants, if you go to something like the Jewish Festival in Boulder, if you go to the Jewish Walk in Denver, which happened a month ago, when you come to the synagogue, be aware of your surroundings. It's good to be a little more cautious as you walk around. I'm easy to spot. People see me. I'm the short, bearded rabbi with the kippah on my head. People see me all the time. And sometimes I have people who say, Rabbi, we're praying for you and your congregation. I appreciate that. That's lovely. Sometimes I have people who scream at me and say, you're a murderer and you're committing genocide. And I look at them and I say, if you want to have a civil conversation, I can. If not, if you wouldn't mind moving out of the way, I'm trying to get the frozen vegetables out of the case at Costco.
Yeah. I can't imagine. I'm so sad that you have to deal with that at all, with people confronting you that way. And you're armed guards at the door. That's not an unusual thing for a synagogue now.
Well, it used to be that if a synagogue had an armed guard, when I was growing up, there was never an armed guard at my synagogue. There was never an unarmed guard at my synagogue growing up. I'm the son of a rabbi. All the years being in the synagogue with my father, I don't remember once ever seeing an armed guard anywhere. But now I don't know that there's a synagogue in America that doesn't have an armed guard at the door. Now, I know in the church world, you might guess I'm not a regular churchgoer, but in the church world, I don't know of churches that have armed guards at every church in town. There's churches that have armed security teams and those sorts of things, but I don't know if there's probably only a small number where in order to walk into the church for either a religious service or a religious school, you need to walk past a guy at the front door who has a gun.
Yeah, I don't see it. I don't think that's common.
Right.
And
that is the reality of every synagogue in America now. There is a guy with a gun when we have Shabbat services. There is a guy with a gun when we have holiday services. There's a guy with a gun when my kids, my 5-year-old kindergarten kids, my 7th grade bar mitzvah and bat mitzvah kids, when those kids come to religious school to study, they walk past a guy with a gun to come into the building. I don't want my kids to walk past a guy with a gun to come into the building. I want them to come into my synagogue and get a hug from me or a high five from me, hug their teachers, and come in and learn beautiful Jewish lessons. And we do that, but not until after they walk past the guy with the gun.
yeah. Well, what do you say to a congregant who comes to you and says, Rabbi, I'm scared, but I want to live my life, and I think I need to get a gun and learn how to use it, carry it concealed or open, however they want. But what do you say to someone who feels that way? Is that an appropriate response to this level of threat?
So I'm torn. I don't think guns are the answer to any problem, including wars. Wars are horrible things, and people die from guns in wars, but they still, in the end, don't answer the problem. Some treaty at the end hopefully does. But I understand the people who want to be armed. The gun laws in this country are different than in other places. Israel has very different gun laws than the United States does. But for those who want to be armed at our synagogue, we just instituted a new firearms policy at our synagogue. And our firearms policy is, first of all, the policy doesn't apply to our armed guards because they're in a different category. But for congregants, we don't allow open carry in our new policy. We do allow concealed carry, but there are some requirements that go along with that, which include some training and some testing and licensing that go along with it. A concealed carry permit in Colorado is not good enough. We have some additional requirements within the building. It's a bit of a compromise because we have some people who want an absolute ban on guns in the building, and we have some people who want every congregant to be armed. I fall somewhere in the middle. I often do fall somewhere in the middle on a lot of things, but we want to make sure that if someone does have a weapon inside the building, that number one, our security team knows about it, because our guards need to know that there's another weapon in the building if, God forbid, something happens. But also, we want to know that that person has more skill than just they passed the class, they took the class for the concealed carry permit. We want to know that their skills are up to date. And so we have a program for that in our synagogue. I understand where they're coming from. I also tell people, I'm your rabbi, not your God. I don't get to tell you what to do. I can give you my recommendations. For me, I don't own a gun. I don't want to own a gun. Will my views on that change if things in the world change? I don't know. My crystal ball's in the shop. It's still broken. But for those who see the need, if they see it, I can give them my thoughts on it, and then they'll make the choices that they need to make.
If I go to Israel, I know I've seen pictures, but am I going to see rabbis carrying what we commonly refer to in the United States as assault rifles, but ARs, AKs, stuff like that, up on the wall here?
Are you going to see rabbis carrying those? Not a chance.
Really? I've seen photos.
What you're going to see is you're going to see military people that have semi-automatic weapons, but for people who are not in the military, the laws are that you are allowed to have a single action weapon. and you have to get licensed. There's a limit on the number of bullets you're allowed to have. You have to pass a psychological test and a shooting test every single year, and you have to have a reason to have the gun. And I want a gun is not a reason. And by the way, you can only have one. So that's the Israeli laws.
Wow.
Now, a reason you can have the gun is I live in Jerusalem. Jerusalem has some dangerous neighborhoods in some of the Palestinian neighborhoods, so that's good enough. I'm a bus driver. I own a jewelry store. For that matter, I own a grocery store. I live within 5 kilometers. I don't remember if it's 5 or 10 kilometers of the border with Jordan, with Lebanon, with Egypt, or with Gaza. That's a reason that you can have one. And so there are very specific gun laws that are there. But semi-automatic weapons are only allowed for the military. Single-action weapons are allowed for other people if they meet all of those various qualifications. And again, there's a limitation on the number of bullets. You're not allowed to have magazines, but you will see walking down the street, you'll see young Army people with automatic weapons because they need to have their weapon with them at all times, even when they're off from their army times.
Sure. So these photos I've seen must be old. I mean, they must predate those gun laws in Israel.
Yeah. Or they're, and again, I am certainly not a gun expert, as you know, but I don't know by the looks of those guns if they're semi-automatic weapons or single action weapons.
Yeah.
But there are in certain places there are a few exceptions to those rules in certain places. So maybe the photos you've seen have been in some of those places in the West Bank and in some of those other places. So that's a possibility as well.
Okay. A lot of my Second Amendment opinions were formed by my relationships with a couple of Jewish men, one of them being the former Boulder mayor, Paul Danish, former legislator, former county commissioner. He was the man responsible for the green belt and a lot of what makes Boulder Boulder. Been in Boulder forever. He's a journalist and a politician, and he's extremely pro Second Amendment, pro gun, precisely because he thinks Jews are victimized around the globe and they need to defend themselves. Another friend of mine who he grew up looking at pictures of his dead relatives from the Holocaust in New York, and he opened a big gun store in Boulder and then later moved it to Longmont. But that was his whole thing too. It's like, this is never going to happen again. What happened in World War II, that's not going to happen. And we're going to arm Jews. This was really both of these men, who I knew them both. That was a crusade of theirs. That hasn't really taken hold in Boulder, where you have some of the strictest gun laws in the state. But that was their philosophy. I'm not saying it was necessarily the right philosophy or one that you should agree with. I just know that that's part of Jewish culture, probably a marginal part.
And it also, I'll tell you my personal views on Second Amendment issues in America are different than my views on weapons in Israel and in other places, because they're different places. And that's why I have varying views on some of those things.
Okay, so we've talked a lot about the university professors and students who are protesting in favor of some organization, Hamas, that they don't really understand. They don't really understand Palestinians or their culture.
Right.
And if they knew it, one of the things that really confounds me about these left-wing protesters, for lack of a better description, left-wing protesters, these are people who would very much support LGBTQIA plus rights. That would be an important thing, I would think, if I went and polled them at one of these pro-Palestinian protests. I would find a lot of support.
You probably would, yes.
LGBT community. Yet what happens to someone who is gay, lesbian, transsexual in Palestine?
Well, I can tell you this with this idea of these groups I see called Queers for Palestine. First of all, I'm a supporter of the LGBTQ community. I have LGBTQ members of my congregation. When I came to Colorado Springs 8 years ago, the day before I started my first day as the rabbi of Temple Shalom, you know what I did the day before? I walked in the Pride Parade. because I thought it was important that my congregants see what I stand for. And I consider myself to be a friend of that community. And it's important to me that the LGBTQ community, which I have friends, I have relatives who are part of that community, they need to feel safe and welcome and loved in my synagogue. And they are safe and welcome and loved in my synagogue.
And they're safe and welcome and loved in Israel.
They are. As a matter of fact, I've been in Israel and I have participated in Israel in the Pride Parade in Israel. In Tel Aviv, there is a massive Pride Parade. I was at that Pride Parade a couple of years ago, thinking back, it was 2019 actually when I was there for the Pride Parade in Israel. And the LGBTQ community is welcomed there. As a matter of fact, according to a couple of travel magazines, Tel Aviv is considered one of the most LGBTQ friendly cities in the world. And yet, last year, in the Pride Parade in Colorado Springs, right behind the synagogue group marching in support of the LGBTQ community, the parade organizers thought that they would put Queers for Palestine right behind us. Under the Hamas government, being gay is punishable by death. It's not something that they convince you don't be that, which isn't a thing you can do. It's not hide it, which isn't a thing that anybody should say to somebody who's part of that community. No, they say you will die. So to see people in the LGBTQ community saying, we are Queers for Palestine, if you're saying we're gay and we want a better life for Palestinians, I want a better life for Palestinians. If you're saying we're gay and we want the Palestinians to have a good home and food and housing and education, I agree with you. But if you're saying that you support the government that is in Gaza now, which is Hamas.
Elected by Palestinians.
Elected by the Palestinians. But in the world that Hamas lives in, homosexuality is punishable by death. And I don't know that every Palestinian person in the world believes that. I don't think they do. But I know that the Hamas government believes that.
Right. You wouldn't have a gay pride parade in Gaza.
Anybody who marched in it would be killed by Hamas.
Yeah. And it wouldn't be pretty. It'd be beheadings. They might throw you off a building. They're going to make an example of you.
But I will tell you this. There are Palestinians who march in the Tel Aviv Pride Parade every single year, and they're welcomed into the parade.
Right. And another issue that I would think that confounds me as to how these very, very, I don't even like to use the word liberal, but left-wing protesters on campuses, they would very much be, if I polled them, they would be in favor of abortion rights. That is not something that is allowed in the Hamas government does not allow abortion. People in Palestine go to Israel. I don't advocate abortions at all. I despise abortion. But if you're one of these left-wing college professors and their students, you support abortion rights, yet you also support Hamas, which doesn't allow abortion. You'll be killed if you have one.
And I'm one of those people who supports abortion rights. According to Judaism, according to Jewish thought, according to the Talmud, according to medieval Jewish thinkers and Jewish law, abortion is permitted. It's not desired, of course, not desired, but it's permitted in certain cases in the Jewish world. That's why I am an advocate for no restrictions on abortion in the United States. It's why I am a supporter of Planned Parenthood in a very big way, and I support any woman who feels that that's the right pathway for her. But here's the interesting thing. In America and in Israel, you and I are allowed to debate this issue. Under the Hamas government, there's no debate about this issue. Someone who has an abortion is put to death, period.
And that's who they support.
And so you've
on
called
any college campus anywhere in America.
And you've called them left-wing protesters. I'm going to call them uninformed protesters because I think they truly are uninformed. I don't think they really understand what they're protesting. I think they're just joining in on the newest protest and they're saying the slogans because it's fun to say a slogan. But I don't think they understand the history of the Middle East. I don't think they understand Hamas. I don't think they understand what really happened on October 7th, which is absolutely horrifying.
Mhm.
It wasn't just a military attack. People were tortured. Bodies were torn apart. People were murdered in horrific ways that I wouldn't even want to sit here and discuss with you. And I've actually seen videos of some of these things, unfortunately, and it's horrifying. I don't think they understand any of that. I think there's the ability to discuss reactions to things, but to say we are in support of people who don't support anything that we believe in because it's a popular protest, it's insanity.
It's almost like they're being controlled by the Iran PR machine.
Well, they certainly are. We know, we have proof that money has come from Iran and has come to help some of the people who've organized these protests who are actually not part of the campus community. They're not professors. They're not students. They're outsiders who have come in to take professors and students who are leaning in that direction and radicalize them more in what they're doing. And this is part of the reason that anti-Semitic acts like what happened in Boulder continue to happen, and I fear will continue to happen, because as long as we allow this sort of speech on college campuses, and again, I said it before, if you want to say, I hate Israel, okay, I support your right to say, I disagree with you, I support your right to say it. If you want to say, I think Netanyahu's a terrible prime minister, okay, half of Israelis think that too. If you want to say Israel's reaction in Gaza and what they're doing is an overreaction, okay, that's a legitimate thing that we can discuss. But to call to globalize the Intifada, to say slogans against Jews that are bringing people out to actually attack Jews, to attack Jews on campus, hold them out of classrooms, to attack Jews on campus and not let them cross different parts of the campus. This is not okay. We can sit down and have a political discussion about how we try to solve this problem. But no matter what, the hostages need to be freed. And we need to find a solution to this that is not about harming Jews in America and in Europe. And those things are not negotiable. Free hostages and stop the attacks against Jews.
Just in general, what advice do you have for the Jewish community at a time like this? I'm terrified for Jews, for my Jewish friends right now. I think, these kinds of things often inspire copycat events. What would you tell them?
So what I tell people is this, and I talked about it in my sermons on this past Shabbat, and I talked about it during my sermons during the holiday of Shavuot. And there's a few things. Number one is do what you need to do to make you and your family feel safe. If that means hiding, great. If that means that you think you need a gun in your home, great. If you think that means that you should just be careful as you go from place to place in the Jewish community, great. So number one, do what makes you feel safe. Number two, make sure that when you're going to places in the Jewish community, that they're places that have security, and they have security that you are certain of. I very much trust the security company that my synagogue uses. I can't tell you about other synagogues because they're not my synagogue. We have a security company that we trust absolutely, and they've worked with us very well, and they're fabulous. And we've taken other measures that Secure Communities Networks and others have talked to us about, doing some things in the synagogue to keep us safe. Additionally, I don't really view Judaism as a religion. Religion is an aspect of Judaism.
Mm-hmm.
Judaism is really a culture. It's a civilization. We're connected to all the other Jews in the world. And we came out of a place, Israel. It's our homeland. And whether we live in Israel or not, we're connected through Israel. We're connected together. And I tell people we need to do the things that Jews do. And what do Jews do? We engage in tikkun olam. Tikkun olam is a Hebrew phrase that means repairing the world. We look at the world and we see what's broken in the world and we try to fix it. Because when God gave us the world, Jewish mysticism says, God left the world incomplete and said to us as people in this world, and Jews specifically, your job is to take the things that I left incomplete and complete them. And when things in the world break, you need to fix them. And you fix them by following the pathways that I laid out for you in the Torah. And I tell my congregants, and I've been telling them all weekend now through Shabbat and Shavuot, that's what we need to do. We need to continue to be an or l'goyim, as it says in the book, in the books of the prophets, a light unto the nations. How can we be a light unto the nations? Despite the hatred that's brought against us, despite anti-Jewish, anti-Semitic incidents, despite all of these things, we need to continue to make the world a better place. And whether that means that we're going to donate more food to Care and Share. If any of your listeners have not donated money or food to Care and Share, please donate food there. It helps feed hungry people. If we need to give shoes, to clothing to homeless shelters, if we need to donate money to other good causes, if we need to donate time to other good causes, this is how we make the world a better place. And we need to not be scared to do those things. To me, that's it. Be proud of your Judaism. Someone asked me if I'll take off my kippah to go to Costco now because someone yelled anti-Semitic slogans at me in Costco. And I said, no, as a matter of fact, I might wear a brighter one so that they see it better. But that's me. And so keep being Jewish, keep being proud of your Judaism, and keep making the world a better place, because I truly believe that if the world sees that Jews are out there making the world a better place, maybe it's a safer world for Jews as well.
I've been thinking about getting a big Star of David necklace just to wear around in solidarity.
I'll tell you, that's funny. I'll tell you something funny. Somebody said to me, they said, Rabbi, you don't wear a Star of David necklace. Are you not proud of being Jewish? I said, did you see the kippah on my head?
Yeah, that kind of gives it away.
It kind of gives it away.
Definitely. You know, I want to go back for a moment to the conflict in the Middle East.
Sure.
There is this idea that, as we've discussed already, but that Palestinians are victims of Israel, of Jews. Whereas it seems to me, from my view, Palestinians have been given the option of a two-state solution for many, many years and don't seem to want that. That's the peaceful solution because, they have their state, Jews have their state. Why are they rejecting that? And do people understand that? Because it seems to me that especially the government that was elected, the Hamas government, and we can talk about that a little more in a minute, but the government, Hamas, is not interested in a peaceful solution. Their only solution is from the river to the sea. Well, let's wipe out Israel.
Well, actually, I don't know that Hamas's only thing is from the river to the sea. I think they want from the meridian on the planet all the way around the planet back to the same meridian. That's what I really think Hamas wants, not just Israel. I think they want a Hamas-led planet Earth.
Sure.
I think it's bigger than just wanting Israel. But I'll tell you, this is another very, very complex situation. The Palestinians have their narrative. The Israelis have their narrative. And if we're being honest with the world, the true narrative is somewhere in the middle between the two. The Palestinians say that Israel kicked all the Palestinians out of the territory of Israel when they came in and forced them out of their land. That's true and a lie, because that did happen in some villages. There were Palestinian villages. And if Jews say this isn't true, they're not being truthful. I've been to those villages and the remains of those villages. There were Palestinian villages that Jews kicked people out of, but not the whole land. That's the Palestinian narrative that has a nugget of truth in it and a lot of lie in it. On the other side, the Israelis say, well, all the Arab states told the Palestinians to leave because they were going to kill all of us really quickly, and then they could come back and take their land back again. There's also a nugget of truth in that and a little bit of lie in that, because that did happen in some places, but it didn't happen in the whole land of Israel. And so if we can be honest with ourselves and say, look, it's complicated. The Arabs did say some of you leave. The Jews did kick out some Palestinians from their villages. None of those things are beautiful, but they're reality in their history. But now what do we do? That's the question. We're not going to go back in America and say we're going to give all the land back to the Native Americans and we're going to get rid of all the American cities.
No, this country was taken by conquest.
Exactly.
And all countries were taken by conquest.
And Israel, remember the War of Independence, Israel was attacked by all of the Arab nations after the proclamation from the United Nations. And who won the war? Israel won the war. And Israel made some peace treaties. Israel has a peace treaty with Jordan. Israel has a peace treaty with Egypt. They're not the warmest peace, but I'm in favor of cold peace instead of warm war. It's a much better thing. And so Israel has this territory, and they gave some of the territory they controlled to Egypt, and that's fine. It created a peaceful place. There was even a little bit of land. It's called Taba. It's now a city right next to Eilat, the southern tip of Israel, that's now in Egypt. In 1989, it was still part of Israel. I was actually there the night it transferred over. I was standing in Israel, and they took down one flag, and they put up the other flag, and my feet didn't move, and I was not now in Egypt. It was a strange moment to be there. But Israel won the war. And Jews have lived in Israel since ancient times. It's not that we came from Europe, this garbage lie that's told, well, it was European colonialism. There have been Jews who've lived in Israel since ancient times. Yes, the numbers decreased for some years, but we've always been in Israel. Palestinians, people say there's no such thing as a Palestinian. I'm going to say this. I'm not going to tell anybody how to label themselves. If you want to call yourself a Palestinian, okay, you're a Palestinian. I'm fine with that. But what does that mean politically in terms of the land? That's a different story. The only possible solution to this, as you said, is a two-state solution. It's the only solution. Here's the problem. There's no one on the other side to make that solution right now. If you have Fatah in the West Bank and you have Hamas in Gaza, these are two groups that are not willing to make a two-state solution. It's the only solution. But until you have a partner, you can't have that solution. And until we have that solution, we have chaos and war.
And it doesn't seem that is ever going to happen, that partner is going to want to go along with that.
I try to be optimistic, and I believe, or at least I'm trying to convince myself that I believe, that in the next generation of Israelis and the next generation of Palestinians, there will be some leadership who will rise up in both groups and be willing to find the answer to make that happen. Maybe I'm deluding myself, I don't know, but I'd like to be positive and think that in the next generation, those leaders will appear.
But if radical Islam thinks that all Jews are infidels and that it is in the best interest of Allah and our society to kill them, it doesn't seem like there's any way that you can turn that into a territorial compromise.
Well, until we have the more moderate part of the Muslim world, which exists, take over instead. But right now, I believe there are people in Gaza who would be willing to work with Israel to find the solution. They're not saying anything because they know that if they do, Hamas will show up at their house and kill them.
Sure.
And so it's going to take a removal of Hamas from power in order to have any possibility that there might be some people in what I will call the normal Muslim world who are normal humans, not like Hamas, who are terrorists. Hamas needs to disappear before any of those other people will have the ability to come forward without fearing for their lives.
And that's one of the reasons that Israel has tried to annihilate Hamas.
Right. And
I mean, that is the reason.
And I'm not sure that you can, with a war, eliminate Hamas, because I don't think that with a war you can eliminate an ideology. You can eliminate people who subscribe to that ideology, but you can't get rid of an ideology. And I also believe that once there is some sort of ceasefire or whatever it will be, I think the only thing that's going to remove Hamas from power in Gaza, it's not going to be a war with Israel. It's going to be the other Arab states demanding that Hamas not be in power in Gaza. That's what I think it's going to take.
Okay, and we talked a little bit offline about the election of Hamas,
Yes.
not with a majority, but with a pretty strong plurality.
Right.
This is the government the people chose. I don't understand that, and unless most, unless there's a large percentage of Palestinians who are radicalized.
Well, I do understand it, and I'll tell you, I believe that had you and I been there for that election, you and I, as crazy as this may sound, you and I probably would have voted for Hamas. And here's why. At the time that the election happened, Fatah, which is an unbelievably corrupt organization, which has stolen billions of dollars over the last several decades that should have gone to help Palestinians build schools and hospitals and feed their families and all of this. Yasser Arafat and others in Fatah have funneled that money into their own personal funds. And they were the opposing party. Hamas came in not as a terrorist organization. Let's stop and say, we know Hamas is a terrorist organization. But in the election, they presented themselves as people who were opening food banks. They were opening health clinics. So who do you want to vote for? The corrupt guys who are stealing all the money so that I can't feed my family, or the guys who opened the food bank and the health clinic? You and I would probably both say, I'd like to vote for the guys who opened the food bank and the health clinic. And that's
Sure.
what happened. And then they came into power, and suddenly the food banks disappeared and they started charging. The health clinics disappeared and they started charging. Today you can go to Gaza. By the way, they're saying there's a famine in Gaza. There's not a famine in Gaza. There's food in Gaza. The Palestinians can't afford it because Hamas is charging so much money that they can't buy it. The food that Hamas is stealing from the United Nations, the food that Hamas is stealing from Israel, the food that Hamas is stealing from the United States, all of this aid that's coming in that Hamas has stolen, and then they're putting it on not really the black market, just the market for prices that Palestinians don't have that kind of money. So I understand why they voted for Hamas. They were the better option of two not so great options, and they were giving away food and healthcare. I'd probably vote for the guys with food and healthcare.
Sure.
But what they didn't do is really do their homework to say, well, where did Hamas come from? They came from the Muslim Brotherhood in Egypt, which we know is a terrorist organization. But how much of a choice did they have? The corrupt guys or the guys who seem to be doing something nice for now that are part of the terrorist organization?
And I can't imagine everything that you just explained, that these protesters, these pro-Palestinian, pro-Hamas protesters on campuses understand any of that.
I don't think they understand one sentence of what I just said.
Because they wouldn't have the position they have if they actually understood that.
Oh, exactly. I mean, what's going on in Gaza is horrific. And if anybody disagrees with me, let me just say right now, you're wrong. I am absolutely right. What's going on in Gaza is horrific, and we can solve it. But the way that we solve it is by getting the hostages home and by having someone who is not Hamas in charge of Gaza. We know that when Israel left Gaza, there were settlements in Gaza. Israel left buildings there. They left businesses there. There's one example that I share with people all the time. There was a flour business. It was a multi-million-dollar flour business that was owned by Jews and had Palestinian workers in Gaza. They sold millions of dollars of flours every year to Europe. Mother's Day, Christmas, Easter, all the things that happen in European society, right?
Mm-hmm.
When the Israelis left Gaza, they left the business there. Not only did they leave the business, they left the computers, they left the financial workbooks, they left all the contact information for all the businesses in Europe that bought the flowers. They handed over everything of a multi-million-dollar business, and Fatah at the time came in and burned it to the ground.
And Israel's the bad guy.
And Israel's the bad guy. How does that work?
Absolutely no sense. None of this makes sense. Now, I'm guessing you're probably not a big fan of President Donald Trump. I don't know. We haven't discussed that at all. But I would like to know how you feel about his challenges to, cutting off funding to Harvard and other Ivy League institutions and any institution that is receiving public funds and is not protecting Jewish students against all of this hatred that's directed at them.
Frankly, I think it's a terrible idea.
Okay.
And I'll tell you why. It's a terrible idea because there are other things that are attached to it. If this was only about protecting Jewish students on campuses, we could have a different conversation. But I know that they are asking universities for all of the information about foreign students, for everything they've ever done on campus. They want, if they're asking to report parking violations. They're asking to report if they got in trouble in the dorms for drinking. Could you imagine a college student getting in trouble in the dorms for drinking? That would never happen on an American campus, right? Of course.
Right.
And so if this was just about, we're going to cut off some funding because the universities are allowing Jewish students to be attacked, I could have a different answer. But because there are other things attached to it, I'm not in favor of it.
But that element of it makes sense.
That element of it, yes. So I'm opposed to the overall product because of the other pieces that are attached. But if it was just about saying, if you don't protect the safety of Jewish students, or for that matter, other students on campus, that you're going to lose some funding, I can support that. I can't support saying to Harvard, we're going to cut off your funding for cancer research because of this. We're going to cut off your funding for other things like that. Cancer research needs to be done, and the government needs to fund that because universities on their own can't afford to do it. So I think we need to be strategic in what's happening with that. So the idea of protecting Jewish students and using funding to universities to do that, I think that's a worthwhile discussion. I don't like the way that it's being done right now. If it were being done differently, I might have a different answer.
Thank you very much for joining me on the show today. Is there any final message you would just like to say to the Jewish community and just society in general, given the state of affairs right now, the hostilities toward your community particularly?
Absolutely. A couple of things. Number one, to the Jewish community and to the non-Jewish community, prayers matter. I don't think prayers solve problems, but they help solve problems. And so prayer matters. So I ask Jews to pray for our community, and I ask non-Jews to pray for our community as well. And support matters. It's important not only that Jews speak up for the Jewish community, but that non-Jews speak up for the Jewish community. I'm not a big social media guy, but I have friends who are. And my friends who are big in social media talk to me about that since October 7th, 2023, their non-Jewish social media friends have been silent and feel that they've abandoned them. And so the support matters. When I'm walking, I was at the big rally back in November of 23 on the Mall of Washington, D.C. 300,000 Jews gathered together on the mall in support of freeing the hostages. And as we came back to Colorado, we were in the airport in D.C., and I had people yelling at me and the other people who were with me. I had some people who were screaming at us, "You're baby murderers, you should die," all of the Free Palestine stuff, all of this garbage that they're yelling, right? And as we walked down the hall there, someone yelled louder, "We support you and we're praying for you." Those voices matter. If you're not Jewish, call your Jewish friends. Ask them how they're doing, because I know how they're doing, and it's poorly. Call your Jewish friends. Let your Jewish friends know that you support them. Let your Jewish friends know that you support Israel. Let your Jewish friends know that you want the hostages to be freed. Let your Jewish friends know that despite all of these incidents that are happening, that you are going to help us stay safe, and you're going to support all of the things that will help us do that. And that's truly what's important.
Absolutely. And I concur completely. I want to encourage everyone to support and defend their Jewish friends and the Jewish community at large. First of all, it's the right thing to do. It's just who we should be as Americans. Second of all, this stuff never ends with Jews. It starts with Jews. And, as the old saying went from Reverend Niemöller, first they came for the Jews, then they came for the communists. And that is all true. So if we don't stand up for each other, we're all in jeopardy, and we just have a far worse society than we should have.
Oh, absolutely, it's true. When I see people go after one group, whether it's Jews or some other minority group, I know that if they succeed, they're coming for the next minority group. And if it's Jews, it's a direct attack on me. When I see others being attacked, my thoughts are, if they succeed, I need to help those other people and support them, because if they succeed, they're coming after the Jews next. And so it is important to know that there's support out there. And like I said, that phone call from non-Jewish friends to Jewish friends, that phone call means a lot.
Thank you so much, Rabbi. I really appreciate you taking time to come to the studio and share
Wayne.
all of your insights at this very important time.
I appreciate you inviting me and letting me be with you. And I hope this will inspire people to really support the Jewish community and maybe even go and study a little and learn more about what's happening in the Middle East, because it's a complicated issue and it's not as simple as terrorist attacks and good guys and bad guys.
Right. And I think truth and knowledge are the way forward.
Absolutely.
On this. Okay. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Wayne.